Welcome to the LowCarbMD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. Today we have another smart kid here, PhD guy, Tro, to join us. It's good to see you, man. And Patreon supporters, thanks for joining us live. This is kind of fun for us because you get to ask questions and then you can't complain that we don't ask the right stuff. So it's good to have you here. Bro, what's happening, man?
No, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, that's one of the benefits of supporting us, guys. We really appreciate it. Pretty soon we're going to be tax deductible. So, all of your donations will be tax deductible. And, and this is it. We're trying to bring you guys interesting people in the field of metabolic health. And today we got a great guy, somebody I've talked to. His name is Dr. Trey Suntrup. He's a smart guy, smarter than me and Brian. He's a PhD. He got his PhD from the University of California at Santa Barbara. In physics and electrical engineering. So this is another engineer, Brian, outsmarting us docs.
Physics, dude. Seriously.
Yeah, I know, right? I know.
That's one thing I use, though. I like physics, though. It's kind of cool when you try to figure out how a ball's going to go and you try to hit it in golf or something, gravity and all that kind of cool stuff.
So, Trey, the cool thing about Trey is he's worked with an interesting company called Readout, and they make this meter, the Biosense meter, and it is a clinical grade ketone meter. And it has a wide variety of uses, from seizures to maybe some glycogen storage diseases, even, and from in the case of me and Brian, for people looking to lose weight and get their metabolic health in order. Some of my patients have used it. They absolutely loved it. Previously we didn't have too many good options and we were recommending keto, but we don't really like it. This is a clinical grade. Your product is actually clinical grade. You've done the clinical trials. You're supporting the clinical work. So we're happy to support you guys and bring you on and hear more about what you guys are doing, what you plan on doing. And basically the way I'd like to start is how you got to going from a PhD in, physics to, all right, let me make some ketone meters and help people with seizures and help people trying to lose weight.
Yeah, sure. So first, thank you guys so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here talking to you guys. Yeah, my career is a bit of a circuitous route, as you could imagine. So as you mentioned, I did my PhD at UCSB, physics and electrical engineering. I worked a lot in devices. So I've always kind of worked with device engineering, devices of different scales. After grad school, I went up to Silicon Valley actually and did some product development work up there. So kind of got into the industry side a little bit more after graduate school. And then, I'm from the Midwest, so I kind of got a little bit homesick. I had been gone from home for about 13 years between college and grad school, and I just kind of started to miss home. So that combined with the fact that, I didn't really feel like a personal connection to the work that I was doing. I wanted to feel like the technology that I was developing was actually really benefiting people and directly so that I don't have to make up some convoluted reason why what I'm doing is important. It actually is important. And so that brought me back to St. Louis, Missouri, and a postdoctoral fellowship at Washington University in the medical school. And that fellowship was really unstructured. It was NIH funded, and it was in medical entrepreneurship and translational science. So essentially what happened is I showed up and they were like, so what do you want to do here? It was like super, super unstructured, which is great for me. I really like that type of environment. And so I worked with faculty in the medical school, helping them translate some of their inventions out of the lab and into the private sector. And as part of that work, I worked with a lot of venture capital firms too in St. Louis in the life sciences. And one of them had this company Readout as a potential investment opportunity. And they pulled me in to do the investment diligence on the company. So I spent, a couple months just doing all the research, kind of validating everything that the founders were saying, making sure that it was, scientifically and technologically sound for the investors. And then at the end of that firm ended up making an investment, and I was essentially part of the investment deal. So they gave them, a seed round investment in me. I got traded. So I've been with the company for about 2 years now. Started off doing clinical development work, and now I'm head of product there.
Wait, I gotta call one BS card right from the start here, Tro.
Sure.
He said he got homesick for the Midwest. It was the taxes in California, wasn't it, man? He started making money, like, I'm leaving.
Yeah, that's another reason for sure.
All my friends are leaving, I'm hearing, man. I'm like the only guy left here in San Diego, apparently, Tro. But I don't make money, so it doesn't matter. I don't have to pay taxes that much. So it's not that big of a deal.
So you're entrepreneurial, you have entrepreneurial spirit, you like working with devices. And then, so how long ago was it that you started working with Biosense and Readout? How long ago was that?
So the company took that investment close to 2 years ago. And that's really where it kind of turned from a garage project into, a real company that was capitalized, that could go hire people and start to really think about commercializing the technology. And so I've been with the company for, actually, I think it's almost 2 years on the dot. That would be 2019, spring 2019 about.
Okay. And can you talk to people again? Because I think, right now, we certainly love Keto Mojo. I use it in our practice. We exclusively use serum in the office. But, at some point, there's some people who just don't want to prick their finger. And there's some people where they just kind of need another tool, and maybe they want something on the go. And, can you tell us where do these all fit in together? Who are the people that would be ideal to use a serum ketone? Who are the people, that may want to use a breath ketone monitoring system? And then what are the downsides of both, and help us understand kind of the whole landscape here?
Sure. Yeah. And that's, I think, a really common question for people who have any interest in tracking ketones, or who are told to track ketones by a provider or coach or anybody really. So maybe we should just discuss like the different methods for how you can measure ketones. I think that'd probably be the best way to go about it. And then we can kind of talk about pros and cons of each, as you say. So I think one that's really common that people are familiar with is urinary ketones. So these are like the strips that basically you urinate on, and then they change colors. Essentially, a chemical reaction happens on the surface of those strips, and they kind of give you an idea of whether or not you're in ketosis, or you're producing ketones. Couple issues with those. First of all, they're semi-quantitative, so they really only give you kind of a range of values, right? They're just not very precise. Also, they're subject to a whole variety of issues, like, for example, how long the urine has been in the bladder. It's essentially the ketones that your body's excreting, right? It's sort of excess ketones that your body's excreting. And another common thing that people see with that is that as they've been doing the ketogenic diet for a couple of weeks or fasting, those urinary ketones actually drop. Because as your body becomes more efficient at utilizing them, they actually don't have to excrete as many. So people feel like they're dropping out of ketosis, but they're actually not. They're just excreting fewer in their urine. So beyond like the first, couple weeks or month, it's really not a good indicator of your level of ketosis.
Brian, I'm sure you agree. We don't tell anybody to use the urine strips. I mean, have you ever told anybody to use a urine strip? I mean, that's a joke in my
absolutely,
opinion.
100%. Yeah, because it's short on, people see it, but then what also happens, Tro, is people start seeing their ketones going down, so they go, "That's it. I'm gonna eat more butter. I'm gonna drink like olive oil all day long," and they go, "My ketones are going back up." It's like, well, you're burning the butter you're putting in, good, but I don't think that's what your goal is.
Well, it may be good for people like with seizures if they needed to keep maintaining it. But even then, I wouldn't trust anybody with seizures with a urine ketone strip. So pretty much I tell people, save your money. Don't even think about buying a urine strip. It's not even worth it. Like, just have your wife or husband tell you if your breath smells, and that's probably as useful as a urine ketone strip. Now, you brought up something very interesting, because I think it talks about metabolic adaptation a little bit. When those, it's funny, like Brian and I, we always measure uric acid, and we've seen uric acid go up kind of initially on a ketogenic diet, and then it just plummets down. I mean, it absolutely just plummets down. Maybe it's because partially probably because the fructose is really dropping, and then partially because, at the level of the kidney, ketones compete for uric acid. So when the body's actually making a ton of ketones, for excretion, if the body's making a lot of ketones, the uric acid gets, and it doesn't know how to utilize them, right? And is inefficient at utilizing them, then the uric acid builds up. And then we typically see uric acid drop as theoretically the body gets better at utilizing ketones for fuel, which I'm not sure we have a great way of measuring. So, anyway, just to put that geeky science stuff out there for our listeners.
Yeah. And I think one of the requirements, for any monitoring technology like this is that you want it to work at the beginning and you want it to work in the long term, right? So these transient effects can be interesting from a physiological perspective, but if you're trying to help folks understand what's going on with their metabolism, you're trying to simplify it as much as possible and take out these confounders to the degree that you can, right? So that, the other important thing to just say before we wrap up on urinary ketones is that particular measurement is looking at acetoacetate. So that's a particular ketone body. There are actually 3 ketone bodies, and each test is sensitive to a different one of those molecules, right? So that's another important thing that we just want to flag here at the beginning.
Yeah, let's just put it, let's be very clear. Clinically speaking, Brian, do you have any use for it? I don't.
No use.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. And I've said to people, just save your money. It's funny how much money people waste on those strips, those urine strips. I'm with you.
Well, the use is this: if people aren't financially strapped. I know Keto Mojo makes a urine strip for people just starting out, so they can kind of, because I think long term, I think once like I don't check my ketones every day anymore because I kind of know where they are because I know what I eat every day and I know I'm consistent. So it's kind of like training wheels. At some point you kick off, at some point, or when you're experimenting and looking, because I'm still learning, and that's why I still love to check the ketones under different circumstances. But yeah, as far as the urine goes, I think we all agree that short term may be beneficial, cost savings, but long term useless.
Right. So maybe we should move on to the blood then, because I know that's the other one you guys wanted to discuss before we get to breath. So blood meters, I think, they are used somewhat in the clinic because they're pretty accurate, right? So there are a couple of different blood meters out there. You mentioned Keto Mojo already. Abbott has their Precision Extra is another one of the big ones in that space. And that particular test is sensitive to a different molecule called BHB, beta hydroxybutyrate. So it's a different ketone body. That's the one that circulates in your blood and is stable in your blood, right? So it's not going to change or degrade as it's circulating. So those tests can be quite accurate. There's a couple things to mention about those though. The first is that actually there have been studies that show that the concentration of that particular ketone depends on where you're extracting the blood from. So it's actually different from capillary blood in your fingertip than it is from if somebody were to do like a venous draw from your arm and take it to the lab. There can actually be like, a fair bit of variation in what they measure there. And there are several reasons for that. To be honest, I'm not, super familiar with that research. We could point folks to the paper if they're interested. But really the gold standard for BHB measurement is a laboratory serum BHB test rather than a point of care test. That said, blood is certainly more accurate than urine. It's certainly going to give you a more precise idea of where you are. But of course, there are a couple of disadvantages, the most obvious of which is you have to draw blood, you have to stick yourself. So we can get to our clinical trial in a bit, but, just anecdotally, we had people complain because we made them didn't make them, we asked them politely to stick their finger 5 times a day throughout the study. And not only were they, destroying their fingers and having to rotate through all their fingers, but they, had to shuffle off in the middle of a work day, go to a conference room, like spread out all their supplies, right? Because you've got the Lancet, you've got to load it, you've got to get the strip out, which is in wrapping, put it in the meter, draw your blood, etc. It's a bit of an ordeal. And folks were, not only was that, a hassle for them, but they were also a bit embarrassed. Like they felt like, their colleagues would think that something was wrong with them or something, right? So it was just a bit of an ordeal for people. In addition to the pain, the other disadvantage is that there's a variable cost associated with that. Each strip is at a minimum about $1. And so each time you take a measurement, it costs you $1, which is fine if you're doing it once a week. That's frankly not going to tell you too much about where you're at. But if you're doing it, several times a day, which, our trial essentially showed is necessary to capture all the variability in ketones throughout the day, that adds up really quickly.
So I just want to talk, a little bit about that for a second, just to give people an idea. We use serum, we're using capillary serum or capillary blood in our office. But the reason why we use Keto Mojo here in our office, and they've done so much, it's funny, they've done so much. Like I have no loyalty to Abbott. I love their Abbott CGMs, but these people have done so much for the industry. I was like ecstatic to say we're going to use Keto Mojo here in our office. And the reason why we use them here in our office is because we're already checking point of care labs on people. So like when they come in, we're doing point of care lipids off of a finger stick. We're doing a point of care A1C off of a finger stick. So it's like they're already pricked. So from our perspective in the office, in these four walls, we certainly like the ketones. And we've had some people with aversions to the needle stick. Like I had a 16-year-old kid who's like, I just don't want to do it. And it was a big deal for him. So, we certainly would use something like this, but these are more individual, right? Like you need a new cap for every person that comes in, and you need a new unit for them if you're gonna, so it's a little bit more individual. But
I think in the clinical setting, also the advantage is that, I'm double checking my, I rely a lot on the 24-hour glucose monitor, the CGM. And so I could double check. I go, check your blood. We'll just see how close, because the interstitial fluid may be off, right? So a lot of times people are freaking out. They go, my sugar's 52. Well, it's really 68. The meters aren't perfect, but we're looking at the trend. So that's the other reason I've used it clinically for that point, so I could double check my readings on the CGM to make sure they're accurate.
Yeah, like a finger stick blood glucose. Yeah, because there is inaccuracy between devices. So that's the way we use the serum. Brian, do you use, I'm sure you guys are using Keto Mojo as well, right?
Yes.
In the office? Yeah. But yeah, you're right. There are some people who are just like, I don't want to prick my finger.
Yeah, but there's people, I mean, it's
out in the real world. And they're out in the real world, and they're done coming to the office, they're done seeing our program, and they're like, you know what, I don't want to do it. Is there another way? In terms of like the clinical accuracy, I feel like it's fairly robust. I mean, would that be, how do you feel? I know like it's, but what do you, how do you feel about serum versus, well, here's the other problem. Up until very recently, there were no clinical grade breath devices.
Yeah, that's been the problem.
Up until very, very recently, up until you guys, right? There have been no clinical grade devices. So we couldn't really say, go use a breath ketone meter. I mean, there's a bunch on Amazon and stuff like that. And we initially got behind a cardiologist who came out with one, but they've never done clinical studies, right? And you guys have done clinical studies. So can you talk about this, where the industry was maybe 5 years ago and where we are now?
Yeah, sure. So just a couple points to pick apart there. So the first one is that the accuracy of blood meters is also going to depend, like the thing that affects the accuracy the most is the strip itself, right? The meter is pretty straightforward in terms of it, the technology involved, but the chemical coatings that are on the strips and the variability in those is actually what's going to give you the variability in the reading. So, the reason why we like Precision Extra in particular is because the strips are individually packaged. And what we found is that they actually have a tighter distribution of, like if you use calibration fluid or something where it's a known concentration, they give a tighter tighter distribution of readings than the Keto Mojo, because those strips are free actually. So free is in like not individually packaged.
They're actually individually packaged now.
Which
Yeah,
they are. Yeah, they are now.
Okay, maybe they heard us talking about that on the airwave.
Yeah, they probably heard you, because people got annoyed by that. A lot of patients are like, dang it, I don't want to open that package every time I got to do this dumb thing. But the accuracy seems to be better. But yeah, absolutely, I totally get it. If it's exposed to air, like the big thing is people with the old school finger sticks for glucose on those kind of they let them sit outside in the sun and they'd be all messed up. Their sugars are crazy, and it's just not
Yeah,
accurate.
exactly.
Old outdated test strips and all that kind of stuff, for sure.
Exactly. And then the other point I wanted to make real quick is regarding testing in the clinic. I think that, there are two different use cases here to really differentiate. One is like what would be good for clinical use inside of the clinic, right? So when your patients come in to visit you, what types of testing makes sense for that use case? And then there's the at-home monitoring use case, right? And I think if you're, like that's a really good point that you make about, hey, we're taking a bunch of different labs with the same, drop of blood. So it's not a big deal for us to do a blood test in the clinic. And that makes perfect sense, right? But I think it's a different picture when you talk about at-home monitoring and at-home use. I
think, no, absolutely. I think that transition point becomes, and if you follow it's the same thing with finger sticks for glucose, right? This is why we like the CGM. I'd rather have an intermittent CGM like once a quarter than a quarter's worth of finger sticks, right? So the technology becomes better for me, every 2 weeks, like once a quarter or something like that, than using something sporadically where I don't get high fidelity information. For me, something like Biosense really becomes useful in the ultra long term, right? And me and Brian, we've talked about this so much. It's like we don't like the scales in the first 3 months. In fact, the scales
Brian
are like terrible. No, we don't. We don't like that. We both don't like the scales because, focusing on the scale as an endpoint, it's usually like it causes the psychology of it is not great, right? But we like monitoring the scales over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, the rest of your life. You're always going to go on the scale in the bathroom, and this is a way for us to just check in remotely, completely without your involvement. Now, same thing with CGM. It's great in the beginning when we use it, right? We are very invasive. We see what's going on. It's very helpful. It's encouraging. It tells them you're doing great, right? But then they're not going to wear a CGM for the rest of their life. So from a surveillance standpoint, that's not great. Now, what I love about products like Biosense is that, hey, look, you can just put this in your pocketbook, take it once in a while, and I can I can know kind of where you're at, right? And that's how it's helpful for me. It's like, and this lasts. How long does so the clinical use and when to use it, each one of these products is useful for me in a different scenario. But we're talking about an ecosystem of monitoring somebody, and that's what I absolutely love about this is it's not invasive. It's easy for the patient, right? They don't have to prick anything. They can just blow into the meter once in a while, and I can get that data. I mean, and that's beautiful in my opinion.
Right. And it's a great point about the scale, right? Because you also think about not just from the care perspective and how tools are going to enable you to care for your patients better, but also a psychological perspective of the patient, right? So as you mentioned, like the scale can just be so discouraging for so many people. And it's because, that the number that shows up there is dependent upon a lot of different things. Like what if you're dehydrated, or what if you're,
constipated,
or
right?
oh
my God, I gained 3 pounds. Like,
or
no,
you're starting your period. You're starting your period, or you worked out really hard the day before. There's so many variables. Yeah. Plus,
exactly right.
And this is what I've been arguing from PCR testing, all this stuff. If I can't trust the data, for instance, my patients that weigh at home and they're 4 pounds lighter than my scale here, right? So I trust my scale here because I know I paid a lot of money for it, so it better be right. And so then we start saying, okay, don't worry if the numbers are off a little bit because it's just a number. We're looking, just like the glucose monitors, I'm looking for the trends. I'm not really saying, okay, there's the absolute number, right? So I think that's a problem we run into too, is that different testing methods, if they're not accurate, if I have a blood pressure cuff that's not accurate, what good is it? It's useless to me.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, just think about it from a frequency of feedback perspective. Like if we're basically saying the scale is only good on like a once every 3, 4, 5, 7 day type of time scale, how effective is that, psychologically for the patient as a feedback tool? Whereas if you did have, a high fidelity, non-invasive way to track your fat burn, you can actually understand the effect of a decision that you make like a couple hours after you make it. Right. And that's something that we see all the time, and people write into us with these awesome screenshots in our app where they eat a meal and then an hour and a half later, their ketones just tank. And they're like, oh, I wonder what happened with that meal. I figured out that, my soy sauce has, whatever in it that's kicking me out of ketosis. And that like really quick feedback is so effective for people, right? Because they can really tie the action that they just made to the effect on their metabolism in this very direct way, right? And that's
exactly
that really changes the game in terms of behavior change for folks who are trying to lose weight.
And with the CGM, we have the same thing. We have immediate feedback, right? It may be a little lag, but they go, oh, I had corn and my sugar shot up. One of my ladies argued with me about sourdough bread. She said there's no sugar in it. Her sugar spikes at 220. Now all of a sudden I'm smarter than I was before she checked her sugars right. Because she can see it herself. She goes, you were right. I know I was right. I know what it's made of, please. Right. I've done this for more than a day. So
right,
there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there's nothing like seeing it for them. Right?
And for us as clinicians, the thing is, look, I see people and I look at their continuous glucose monitor. I look at their ketones. I'm seeing what they're doing. I know they're on track and they don't lose weight. So they come in discouraged. I'm like, look, you're doing the right stuff. You're good. We got to tweak this. Let's cut back the alcohol maybe. And so yeah, anyways, I want to jump over a little bit to the breath test and how, because my problem with the other meter, I'll tell you this for sure. I have a lady, she's diabetic. She's out with the girls, has a couple glasses of wine, and she blows ketones like through the roof. And she's like, oh, I'm being ketoacidosis. I was like, see, alcohol, like it's been fine. It was just one blow. And that's, that just happened to be right after you had a couple glasses of wine. Don't drink the wine, first of all. But second of all, like check it with the keto. So I had her check it with her Keto Mojo that she had sitting there. She's like, oh, okay, doc, I'm fine. Right. It's good. Okay, good. I'll go back to bed then.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
Can we talk about the market in general? Because I have to be honest, I think up until you guys, I haven't found a product that I felt was clinical grade enough for me to rely on.
Troy, have you used it? Have you used it comparison to the blood ketones?
Yeah, it's almost linear. I mean, I trust this.
That's the important thing, is if I trust it, right? Absolutely. I need to trust the data. That's good to hear.
But I didn't trust any of the other ones, right? I was interested in them.
Trust me, I
didn't trust them. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So, there definitely was a market for breath sensing and breath ketone testing before we came along, as you mentioned, right? So there were devices already out there in the market. Most of them were kind of repurposed alcohol sensors. So the type of breathalyzers that law enforcement uses when they pull you over and give you a breathalyzer test. So they're actually sensitive to a different analyte than the one that we care about. So just to be really clear, the breath ketone is acetone. That's the molecule that we're actually trying to detect. So what the acetoacetate that is circulating in your blood degrades into acetone, and that acetone can diffuse into your lungs because it's small, it's volatile, and then you can actually exhale that compound, right? And so we can detect this, and if we can detect it accurately, then that's a perfectly good indicator of your state of ketosis. So up until us, that was, one of the big issues with those devices is that they were just sensitive to the wrong analyte, right? So there's some cross sensitivity to a lot of those sensors between acetone and alcohol, which is why they give something, right? But they're really not tuned to the right analyte. That's the first issue with them. The second is probably the most important one, which is the concentration of acetone in your breath actually varies as you exhale. So if you imagine taking a breath and then giving a big long exhale, the acetone concentration goes up near the end of your breath, right? And this is really intuitive, actually, if you think about it. When you breathe in, most of the air that you breathe in doesn't interact with your lung tissue. It just sits in the middle of your lungs, right? And in your esophagus and everywhere else. And then you blow it out and it's the exact same air that it was when you breathed it in. So the air that is actually interacting with your lung tissue and exchanging with the blood in your lungs is deeper inside of your lungs. And that occurs more toward the end of your breath. So really the core part of our advantage and our product's advantage is we selectively sample only that last part, right? So we essentially discard the whole first portion of your breath and ignore it, and then wait until, the device essentially senses when you're getting to the end of your breath, and then a pump kicks on and actually pulls the air from the mouthpiece into the guts of the device where the sensing actually occurs, right? So it's this combination of the device listening for the end of your breath and then picking out just that point where you have the highest concentration of acetone, because it's not only the highest concentration there, but it's most repeatable. It has the highest correlation with the ketones that are in your blood. And then we only sample that part. So that's actually protected intellectual property for Biosense. So our patent was actually granted for that sampling method last June, I think it was, last summer. So we actually have a intellectual property protection around that particular sampling method. And that's really the key enabler of why this device is so much more accurate than anything that's come before.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that we've seen with people is like, they're like, it's in where they breathe out kind of is an issue, how long they breathe out kind of. I found using, the Biosense that it was just easy. It was just easy. It was very, very easy. And then I love the way that it graphically displayed it right on the device, and then also kind of in the app, so you could kind of track it over long term. So if you didn't, I found it overall a great tool. And it's tough, I don't think we could rely on the breath meters out there up until this point. I really felt that way. I was interested by the Keto device, and they were promised that there would be some sort of research into it. We haven't seen that yet,
Right. Well, I mean, the technology is fundamentally limited, right? There's actually one more component that factors here when you compare the different products. And that is, some of these products, the sensor is actually exposed to air. So you can actually look and see the sensor. And what that means is that, anytime that your breath is passing over the sensor, it's mixing with outside air, right? In a way that's kind of not controlled, essentially, right? So you have, ambient air coming in the side of the device and interacting with the sensor plus your breath. And it's kind of this summation of those two that gives you the reading. And for Biosense, the sensor is actually sealed inside of a flow cell, which is why you need a pump to actually pull in the breath, because the sensor is sealed, with a gasket and everything. So it's really just kind of hermetically sealed in there. So you're not mixing the ambient air with your breath sample while you're taking a measurement. So it's really the highly selective sensor, the sampling method where we just look at the end of breath, and the fact that we have like a sealed, compartment where we do the sensing. All of those really add up to really high precision and really high accuracy. One way that there's kind of a cheat sheet for how you can tell is look at the number of different readings that one of these breath meters will give you. And the fewer they have, the less precise and less accurate it is. Because basically the way that they get around the fact that it's not accurate is they say, well, we'll give you like 1 of 4 or 1 of 6 levels. And then we have these giant buckets, to put each reading in. And that's basically a way to kind of obscure the fact that it's not a very accurate device. Ours gives 40 different levels, right?
And
is there a problem with this alcohol confounded, or should we wait a certain period of time after having a glass of wine or something like that to check?
Yeah, so we still have the alcohol issue. It's not as pronounced as some of the other devices because, as I mentioned, the sensor is much more highly selective to acetone over alcohol. So we actually launched our product about a year ago when conferences were still happening right before COVID at Metabolic Health Summit in LA. And we actually had, this is like crazy to think about now since COVID started, but we actually were doing testing of our device. And we would like swap out mouthpieces and folks would use the same device, but with a different, I know it's like mind blowing to think about now. It's a totally different world back then. But we were actually doing this during happy hour when people were, had a glass of wine or a beer or whatever, and they were coming by and doing testing. And we did see some elevation, but it was relatively minimal. So, as I mentioned, our device goes from 0 to 40, 5 being the cutoff for ketosis, essentially. So anything above 5 on our device is, you're in ketosis, essentially. And if folks were supposed to be a 5, they would blow like a 7 or something, with the alcohol in their breath, right? So, we do recommend that folks wait until the next morning after they drink. Typically what we do is we say, if you're going to take a reading in the evening, just take your last reading of the day before you start drinking. This is just something that, you can minimize the effect with the selectivity of the sensor, but you can't eliminate altogether.
Yeah, that's just good for educational purposes for patients, Absolutely.
Right.
Can you talk about why, so I know you guys, are an FDA class 1 medical device, right? Which is, when I see that, I know somebody's trying to do things the right way. I don't know of any other acid, like a breath meter, that is, as studied and regulated. Let's put it that way. Can you help me understand, like, where does your product fit into, clinical grade applications versus the other breath meters? Because I don't think any of the other breath meters are registered as FDA devices.
Right. Yeah. So we knew when we were coming out with this device that the waters had been sort of polluted reputationally for breath meters. Like you guys brought it up right at the top, right? Most people, when you read reviews of the different ways to measure ketones, everybody kind of tosses breath away, right? And so we knew that when we came out with our product, or when we were about to launch it. And so we knew we were going to kind of have to come at it with some actual firepower data-wise, because we were kind of starting from a negative reputational standpoint for breath sensing rather than zero. So not only was it a new technology, but it was a space that people just didn't have a lot of faith in. So before the product launch back in 2019, I guess it was, we decided to conduct a clinical trial ourselves to actually compare the readings from our device with a point of care breath meter. So essentially what we did was we took 20 folks who were metabolically healthy for the most part, and who were just interested in doing, low carb or ketogenic diets for lifestyle reasons. And we gave them a Precision Extra blood meter, and then our device, the Biosense device. And for 2 weeks, they walked around with those two devices and did simultaneous blood and breath measurements 5 times a day. So that's like a very kind of gnarly like measurement protocol there. But, we really wanted to see how ketones change during the day, because people understand this with CGM, right? There's a lot of variability in glucose throughout even a single day, depending upon what you do, what you eat. But because there hasn't been this easy frictionless way to do ketone measurements, there's really not a lot of data on daily variability of ketones, right? This is only starting to come out. The research is only starting to be produced on this. So what we found is, after the couple of weeks that we gathered all the data, we got about 1,300 data points comparing blood and breath, which is about 3 times more than all the historical literature combined. And the reason why that data hadn't really been gathered is the reason that I had just mentioned. There wasn't a convenient way to do breath testing. So people, in the old studies were breathing into these bags. They were running them off to labs to do, mass spec measurements. And you really can't do that 5 times a day, right? That's not really a practical thing to do.
And what ketone meter were you using blood to compare it?
Yeah,
The
so
Precision Extra, right?
Precision Extra. Okay, I thought so. I was just double checking to make sure. Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, we did a bunch of QA on the breath meters, and that was the one that we felt most comfortable with. That was the one that our PI felt most comfortable with. So that's what we went with. And a couple big conclusions from that study. There's a bunch of interesting things that came out of it. But the first is, I already kind of mentioned, which is that ketones are highly variable throughout a single day, right? So I think people who are used to measuring ketones at all, particularly the blood meter, might wake up and stick their finger, in the morning, and that's kind of it. But what we found is no matter if you're measuring blood or breath, in both cases, you get about a 50% variability on average over the course of a single day. For some people, it was much bigger than that, though, right? Again, it depends on their physiology, the activities that they're doing, what they're eating, but you really get these big swings in ketone levels, even in a 24-hour period. So that really highlights the need to measure more than once a day if you're really trying to capture the full picture of what your metabolism is doing from a fat burn perspective.
Yeah, and also, the same holds true for our continuous glucose monitors. The reason they're so helpful is we can see what happens with exercise, what happens if you're stressed, what happens if you have a fight with your wife or husband, those kind of things, and we could see and say, okay, you're not doing anything wrong. It's your body's. This is physiologic change. For instance, on ketones, if I work out, I do Ben Bakikio's workout. If I'm fasted, I was fasted for a while on this one, but it went from 4.4 to 2.2 with working out, right? Within half an hour, it dropped. And then it maintained. So I was thinking, well, yeah, I'm burning, my ketones are dropping because I'm using those as a fuel source, right? So there's a lot like that that's interesting over time just to see. And the other thing I know clinically now, I have a young guy I'm trying to, do a continuous glucose monitor. I'm like, dude, you went like 6 hours, like 3 days in a row without checking. He goes, I keep forgetting. I'm so busy. I got, is your phone too heavy to hold up to your arm? Dude, this isn't like, like you have to do something really complicated. So I was teasing him. Now I'm seeing he's checking his sugar all the time now, but that's part of it too. I think the cost is prohibitive of checking your ketones 5 times a day for most people, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the example that you just gave highlights the need for these frictionless testing methods, right? Like if it was, because even like swiping your phone by your arm, he's like, oh, I forgot to do that. Imagine if it had even more friction in it, right? Just fewer and fewer people are going to do it, right? So the need for high frequency data, or the usefulness of high frequency data, is why you need the measurement itself to be frictionless, non-invasive, easy to use, right? So that's the first point that we saw in the trial. The second, which is important for the question about clinical grade and FDA and all that, is that we saw this very high correlation with blood ketones, particularly if you're looking at full day ketone exposure. So what I mean by that is if you basically look at like the cumulative amount of ketones that were in your blood or breath on a single day, they're very highly correlated. The point-to-point correlations, which you see in the literature, are moderate. And the reason for that, they're, I don't know if the number means anything, but they're in like the 0.6s R-squared correlations, is because blood and breath actually change at slightly different rates. So your blood ketones might go up and then your breath ketones might go up an hour later, right? So they're not exactly like perfectly in lockstep. As far, it makes essentially no difference if you're just tracking during the day, like an hour is not a big deal. But if you're doing like scientific analysis of correlations, it essentially like reduces the apparent correlation because there's this time lag, right? So, but if you look at the full day exposure, the correlations are in the 0.8s. I think we got 0.83, right? Which shows this very, very high correlation with blood ketones. And so, that result really gave us we suspected that we would find that. And then when we did, that gave us the confidence to really approach the clinical use case and say, hey, this is not just a fun consumer product for somebody who's, interested in the ketogenic diet. This can actually be used by clinicians who are treating patients, right? And that's really where our focus is. Our device can be purchased on our website by anyone, but we're really interested in the clinical use case and actually having patients use this as part of programs that are treating different conditions ultimately. So whether that's weight loss or whether low carb and ketogenic diet's being used to treat Alzheimer's, right? There's some studies that are being used where ketogenic diet is used as an adjunct therapy for cancer, right? All these really interesting disease states that are now being classified as metabolic diseases, or at least highly related to metabolism. We're really interested in getting involved there as well.
Yeah, I'm smiling because every time I see these studies come out, I just get so joyful, because when Tro and I started talking this 2 years ago about mental health and anxiety and stress and depression, and now we have data on schizophrenia getting better, obviously seizure disorder. We were called quacks and nuts back. I mean, we got attacked. I did, at least, maybe not Tro as much. Tro's always attacking people. But I was like, man, this is surprising because I'm seeing it clinically. What do you want me to say? I don't know why, but I'm seeing it. I'm just reporting what I'm seeing. Now all the data is coming out saying that. So that's why it's so important, because who knows? Checking ketones on people with bipolar disorder. We have data on that now. So if we're in ketosis and you're subjectively doing better, and we say, yeah, when you're in ketosis, you're doing better when you start eating terrible food. We see the same thing with diabetics, poorly controlled diabetics, depression, anxiety, stress, suicide goes up drastically. And it's not because they're depressed that their sugars are out of control. It seems like it's the other way around based on the data. So I think these are very, very, very important topics that we need to address. And one thing I've noticed in myself is, as I've been in ketosis for, years now, I see that my ketone levels drop. They're 0.6, 0.8 typically now. They used to be 2. So over time, I think your body starts using that as a fuel source, and that we're, not to be scared of your ketone. So I show patients, they get upset. I go, look, man, I'm at 0.6, 0.8. It doesn't mean the higher your ketones that you're losing more weight necessarily. It really does depend on if you're fasting, if you're, how much fat you're eating, all those kind of things also.
Yeah. And that's actually a really interesting point that you make about the blood ketone dropping after you've been doing this for a while. We actually don't see that effect in our device because it's sensitive to a different ketone. So we have people who are used to measuring blood ketones, and then they get our device and they're like, why are my ketones so high? And it's because acetone, again, being a different molecule than BHB, which is that the blood test is measuring, doesn't drop as you are an experienced keto dieter or faster, right? So the thing that you saw where your ketones are now down at 0.6, I bet your breath acetone is much, much higher than that. So
Yeah,
that's another advantage. It doesn't drop.
Yeah, the body can't use acetone, right? So it's another way of just kind of looking at, it's kind of like the 8 blind men touching the elephant, it's more information, higher fidelity information. I just have to come back to this because you guys have done it right. The other, meters on the market, like Keto, with Dr. Ethan Weiss, who we had on previously, we were hoping that they would have done the actual work to make it a medical device and do the clinical trials. We haven't seen that. So we really appreciate people like you and companies like you who are going a little bit further and doing this the right way and, making it a medical grade product. I think
we have
need
to trust
that
the
more
device. That's
we have to trust the device, right?
Have to.
And
It's
if we
useless
can't
without
trust the
trusting it.
device, it's not useful. So this to me, this is now in my armamentarium. Particularly in my case, I don't know about you, Brian. It's for those people who've kind of
Trey
been
hasn't
through the
sent me one,
program.
so I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I have to go.
Yeah,
I can't afford it yet, Trey. I haven't been around as long as you, man.
yeah. Well,
No, hey, so
what?
on that topic, actually, how
Yeah.
much would it cost a person, like an average person wants to get it? How much is because I'm just looking from a business standpoint. I go, okay, it's like, when they sell me a printer, they'll send me the printer cheap because they know I'm going to be buying ink for the rest of my life, right? So what's the longevity of the device and how much does it cost the patient to get the device? I really don't know that information. That's what I'm curious. So that would be my limiting factor for me in practice.
Yeah, exactly. So, we don't have that model. We have the upfront cost model and then no disposable costs. So
Exactly.
the device, exactly. So that, the device itself is $299 on our website. And then it's unlimited testing for as long as the device lasts, which is about 2 years, right? Is what we expect. So, if you start doing the math on like multiple measurements per day over a 2-year period, it, gets very, very small cost per measurement, right? And again, think about what we're talking about here. We're talking about your metabolic health, right? We're talking about you, and it's information, as you mentioned this earlier, actually, which is that, the more you measure and the more you learn about your body, that's knowledge that you can take with you for the rest of your life, right? And I've done kind of really gnarly nutritional routines where I'm like tracking macros and doing all this stuff. And the information, I don't do that stuff anymore, but the information that I got from those experiences, I still use, right? So certain patterns in the way that I eat and how I shift my macros throughout the day or, around my workouts or whatever. So my point is just, it's really an investment in understanding your body and how your body works. And, something that we see with our users is that, everybody's different. So, you eat a banana and I eat a banana and it's a totally different effect depending upon, our own physiology and what we're doing, right? Or if you just worked out or a million other factors, right?
Absolutely. And I think that is a critical point because, I know Tro and I get pigeonholed sometimes. Go, do you think keto is the only way? And we hear it all the time. I go, you haven't listened to the podcast, have you? Because I have guys, if I take you in, you could eat way more bananas than me. I guarantee it. Right. And I know people who can eat, carbs because they're working out 3 hours a day and they're just burning it. Who cares what the fuel? And the same goes for people who are worried about more fat in the blood. If you're burning it, who cares? If you're running at a calorie deficit, who cares? You're burning it as a fuel source. So I think that's one of the things that people get really, because I can see if your ketones are through the roof and like, okay, maybe you don't have to be in total huge ketosis. You can liberalize your carbs. And I have a lady just yesterday, I saw Tro to prove I know what I'm doing. This lady was 139 pounds or something, 129 to start, 129 pounds. Her insulin was 59. Now it's 3. She's metabolically healthy. She's lost a ton of visceral fat, but she wasn't fat. She wasn't fat ever, but she was in danger. She would have been diabetic by now for sure, right? So sometimes having those variables and looking at the numbers. So she said, can I eat more carbs? I'm like, of course you can. You're metabolically healthier. Of course. Let's keep an eye on your insulin level, your triglycerides, all this stuff, and we can follow you and we can liberalize it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? You're killing it. You don't have to be zero carbs.
Absolutely. And it's not just the keto diet. Like, a lot of these other products are really pitched like heavily at keto, like keto's in the name of the product, right? And we really deliberately avoided that because this is not a ketogenic product. What this product is telling you is if you're burning fat, right? Are you burning fat or are you burning glucose primarily, right? And those are the two primary fuel sources for the body. And it doesn't matter how you get there. So I did an experiment about a year ago where I did like a very low calorie diet as well, and my ketones went up, right? All the original breath acetone research was on low calorie diets, not low carb diets, right? So it really doesn't matter how you get into that state of fat burn. In fact, the device can tell you what types of patterns are most effective at getting you into that state, right? So we don't want to tell people, you have to eat this macro composition, or, that's a very complicated thing, as you guys know, right? It depends on, all types of lifestyle factors and cultural factors and all that stuff, right? So what you want to have instead is a tool that just tells you, are you in this state or not? How you get there, obviously is a conversation between you and your provider or your coach or your family or whatever, right? But it's telling you whether you're burning glucose or burning fat.
Yeah, and patient preference too is a huge factor, right? So you have to say, okay, do I want to have six-pack abs or do I want to just live a long time, right? Because, I think we're learning a lot, and I think that a lot of different dietary tribes are going to realize, hey, I think ultimately it's going to come down to, if we attack visceral fat and decrease visceral fat, we do better. Put on muscle mass, decrease visceral fat. I'm telling you, I see muscle guys who can get away with it. That's why I try to intervene with Tro and Lane fighting with each other, because I go, look, we're seeing different populations. If I have a 400-pound diabetic whose sugar's out of control, they're keto, man. There's no way out of that. I don't know any way out of that otherwise. I've tried other stuff. It's not going to work. So, there's different approaches, but I have a 22-year-old triathlete who has muscle mass. I mean, like, dude, everything's normal. Don't worry about it. Well, maybe down the road we will watch it, but I think we have enough, we're getting enough experience to say, our clinical experience in our labs and having monitoring like this can tell us a heck of a lot of information. So I think it is very valuable from a clinical perspective for sure.
Well, look, bottom line is this: we don't have a calorie adherence tool, right? But we have a carbohydrate and metabolic flexibility adherence tool, right? So we have some ways to actually provide help with adherence. Right. And I think that's the ultimate goal. Like, does the patient need help? Are they in ketosis? Are they struggling? Do they need you to contact them? And this is something I could definitely use in my arsenal. And just to put it out there, I've received have you guys paid me yet? Have you guys sent me any checks?
Are we planning to pay you? I don't think we are, right?
Yeah, exactly. You've given me no money.
Or they want real endorsements, man. They're not going to pay us. They want the
they've got I'm not
guys.
paid to do this. I'm not paid to say this, right? We use Keto Mojo in the office here. They don't pay us. We pay them. I have this in my office. I'm recommending it to my patients because I believe in it, right? So this is not like, this is completely because we believe in what it is we see and we support what you guys are doing. So we're really happy to have you on, and this is such an amazing tool. Where do people go to get it? How do they get it? How do they buy it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the device can be purchased on our website. It's mybiosense.com. That's the place where folks can go. There's also information about the device and about ketosis and a bunch of good information there. After device purchase, there's also a mobile app to download if you're interested in tracking trends over time. We're actually constantly adding features to that mobile app. So, something that we just released actually today. I know there's a little bit of a lag when this comes out, but today we actually released a new version of the app that has messaging in it as well. So we can start to look at your data and then, give you insights back about the numbers that you're seeing. So I think that this is going to be a really big deal for folks because this is not just a data tracker, right? We don't want it to just be something that takes your data and presents your data back to you. We want to also play a role in helping you interpret what those numbers mean and what you might be able to do to change them. So our ultimate aspirations are to keep bolstering the feature set of that mobile app in order to provide more guidance to folks, right? And so highly encourage people to download the mobile app as well. It's on iOS and Android. It's just called Biosense by Readout. And then the device will Bluetooth sync to that and send all your data to the app.
That's awesome. Let's open it up to some quick questions. I don't know if we're going to have so many people geeking out like me and Brian, but we'll give it like a second for any questions, and otherwise we may call it a day. Anybody have any questions on this device, ketone measurement in general? Now is your time, so you have a minute.
No, I'm gonna mess around with this. I've been a critic and a skeptic, but I'm pretty dang impressed, Trey. Even though you're good looking and smarter than me, I'm not going to hold it against you.
Thank you.
It's wrong, dude.
Yeah, well, you should try the device and then let me know.
We'll just do the audio part. We're not going
I've
to do
tried
video
it,
on this.
Brian. It's good. I've tried it. It's good. And it, you know, in terms of breath ketones, it's the only one I trust so
Will
far,
told
you
me
know, right
that
now.
about other stuff too, but we'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm a skeptic, but you know, I'm really excited about it. I think it's really, I think if you have something, I mean, the reality is we're dealing with real life. Where, you know, this is where we get into fights online sometimes, because it's like we're dealing with real life. Sure, I could put anyone in a lab and give them 500 calories or whatever I want, they're going to lose weight. Like you're talking about the very low calorie. The thing is, what I'm seeing is, like, if I can get someone to put muscle mass on and decrease their visceral fat, they're going to do better in the long run. So if I starve you, and I've seen it, I have data on this, where guys come off a liquid diet, 500 calories a day, they lose all their muscle mass. Then what? It's hard to get the visceral fat now, because the muscle mass is helping you attack that, burning energy all the time, your metabolic rate. So it's really great to be able to follow it that way and see. And plus we can check the visceral fat, we can see what's happening, right? And so I think with what I'm saying, I just did an interview with Rafi Sartoli, and I was like, man, if I can make people metabolically healthier with all the dang tools, like your tool, you know, everything we have at our arsenal, these guys like Westman and Unwin, they did it without any of that stuff. They just put a string around their waist and go, okay, your visceral fat's decreasing, you're doing great. It's like they didn't have any of this stuff. And that shows what great clinicians they are, because they intuitively knew, right? So that's what's awesome. The more tools we have at our disposal, the more data points, the more helpful it is. So I'm really excited from a standpoint of corporate health and really letting people see their numbers. When you see it, you go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize when I ate that one food, my sugars go crazy. Then there's no arguing that. Right. So sorry, Taro, go for your questions, man. I was just waiting for people to get their questions in.
Actually, we got two things. Bob Collins, one of our longtime Patreon supporters, said, love the information. Very happy to hear about it. And then one of another Patreon supporter, Ellen Wilson, she wants to know what's the website again. So
sure.
That's all we got so far.
Yeah, the website is My Biosense. MyBiosense.com.
Spell it out for people in case they get messed up, like me.
Sure. So My Biosense, MyBiosense.com.
All right, good.
Perfect. All right, guys, this was a pleasure, Trey. Thank you for stooping down to our level and talking to us plain docs, plain clinicians. We appreciate you giving us the science behind this all.
No, you guys are great. Thanks so much. And I love what you guys are doing clinically. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and everyone, thanks for listening. I think this is really important stuff. I think, again, the more data points we have, the more accurate tools we have, that you put the money in. I'm telling you, that it's expensive to do those studies. That's why a lot of stuff's not done. When people say, how come there's no study on this? Well, because it costs a lot of money and no one wants to fund it. No one's really excited about someone taking their business away. So I think more and more people are putting money back into research and saying, look, we have to do something legit. So it's not just getting out there as a gimmick. That's the problem, is a lot of the stuff has been a gimmick, saying, oh, you want to check ketones, we can help you. But I'm blowing it, and it's 3 different numbers 3 different times. I'm like, I can't, I don't know what to do with that data.
I'm going to have to echo that. It was really discouraging to see kind of the lack of clinical grade data to support a product, and it's funny, like the way they skirt around it, these people they skirt around is they make it not a medical device. And so they're displaying inaccurate data that people are going to try to use, right? And so these other, breath meters that are on the market, you can't rely on them. And we really appreciate companies like you who are actually going about it the right way. So very happy to support it.
Yeah, and I really don't think it has to be mutually exclusive either. I think there's definitely indications for finger stick. There's definitely indications for an accurate breath. And I think most people would rather, if they're at home and they're driving in their car, they go, I'll check my ketones real quick, right, rather than fumbling around doing so. So I get it from it has to be stuff that's that people will do, right? There's some stuff, if it's too hard to do, people aren't just gonna do it, or just too expensive over time. But yeah. The only downside is you're going to have people checking their ketones like 300 times a day.
That's not a downside for us.
Every 5 minutes. Like, dude, seriously, man?
Yeah.
You're good.
Exactly.
Tro probably would do that, I bet.
I did it maybe 50 times.
Yeah.
Trey, we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for the kind words. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.